Hi, this is Elaine Benfield, and welcome to the second episode of Herstories. As you can see, I have a special guest here today. And even though this podcast is called Herstories, I do want to have perspective of fabulous men in my life, including my wonderful 17-year-old son, Alexander Benfield. So welcome, Alexander.
Hello, thank you for having me on.
Thanks for being my second guest. I promise this won't be a family-owned only podcast series. But so one of the questions and feedback I got from my previous podcast was really describing why I chose my guest. And so I wanted to highlight, obviously Alexander's my son. He was happy from the day he was born, a complete joy, not to make myself emotional, super just loving, kind, thoughtful, and just always worried about others. And that's one of the reasons I thought he'd be a great guest, talking about for his generation, what he's seeing, political environment and whatnot. So there's many things I can say. I'll probably write a blog about it. But I would like to kind of kick in, if you don't mind, tell everyone where you are in your life with, what grade you're in and kind of where you are.
So before that, the other day, I was thinking of what you do that inspires me. So
I was not expecting that.
So anyone who's getting into this podcast, learning who this amazing woman is, she's the perfect example of an independent woman. She's raising 2 kids on her own. She's providing for them. She's the perfect mother. I could not ask for a more amazing mother. She's getting emotional.
I'm trying not to. Thank you. I did not know this was coming.
Yeah, amazing. She's one of the greatest workers I've ever seen. She has a vision. She will accomplish it. With this podcast, like 6 months ago, she was thinking about making a podcast, and here we are. She did it. She climbed the mountain. She did everything required to get to this point. And I'm just so incredibly proud of her. And she's one of the most caring and loving people that I will ever meet. One of the most wonderful souls and just an amazing person. So just anyone who doesn't know who Elaine Benfield is, that is who she is. So get used to it.
Well, okay. Thank you so much for that. Really, I guess Mother's Day's done. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it more than you know. And you truly, when I ask for help, just know this is part of, I was like, hey, I've got this line, and Alexander, of course, helped me without question, maybe a little resistance, but no question. So thank you for that. I mean, amazing. I'll try to, watch my two. So tell me where you are in your life with, what are you at school, and give me a little, and our audience, a little more background about you.
Yeah, so I'm currently a junior in high school. So I'm very college is coming up. Mm-hmm. Definitely my biggest
anxiety
larger than life kind of feeling. Because it's going to affect the rest of my life. So
does it give you anxiety? How are you feeling? Because there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. So just everything from the college process itself to the weight of the decision, mm-hmm. The writing essays to just everything that's required to kind of even apply to college. And then after that, the stress of college and just, I'm very because in a year I'll know where I'm going to go to college.
Yeah, even potentially even less than that.
Yeah, 8 months to a year, and it's just a very surreal feeling. That
is it overwhelming at times? How do you feel? I know you go to a great school that's really helping you, and you have a great college advisor. But are there days where it's just super overwhelming for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I haven't really done much for the college process yet, besides ACTs. Really, most of it has just been kind of trying to narrow it down. Yeah. Nothing essays or actual work that will be submitted to colleges mm-hmm. yet. But it's mostly just like brainstorming. It's kind of where I'm at with college. But besides college, I mean, it's still related to college, just career wise, no idea.
Yeah, trying to figure out who you're meant to be.
Yeah, still finding myself, as everyone is.
Yeah, you're 17, so I didn't know who I was at 17 either.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd love to be back on here in like in 2 years, something like that. Like,
even the college process would be interesting, I'm sure. Like, what's your perspective, as you get into it, even the next 6 months?
Yeah, and just seeing like, I feel like I'll change a lot within the coming.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to tell the listeners, when you went into the school, you're at a school for gifted students. You're, I'm going to say super smart, one of the smartest kids, most diverse children, good in everything. So that's my humble mom brag. But you actually got into school on a project that the school has never seen before.
Yeah.
And so I'd love you to talk about that, which kind of leads into some of the core topics I'd love to talk about with you.
So, I'm very interested in politics and just general, like, kind of just the state of the world, like stuff like that. A lot of history as well. So, during the 2018 midterm cycle, I was very interested and involved with it. So what I did was I created basically my own like election night kind of like slideshow. So it was kind of like just like a scenario of the election, and I made a couple of them, and it's something I'm very proud of. It was very
But you did it for, it's not just even election. You went down to like granular levels within the 50 states, and you were predicting. And wasn't it like only one race in like Kansas?
Yeah,
right?
so
it's incredible.
The 2018 midterms, I think the only...
I used to know it. I can't remember anymore.
Yeah, I think I got one Senate race wrong, but I forgot which one. I think it might have been Georgia, actually.
Yeah.
So I'm just one thing I feel like everyone should know about me is just politics is something I'm very passionate about, and just understanding not only my point of view but other people's points of views is something that I feel is just very essential to kind of a functional society.
Well, so part of what we always have, conversations during dinner, you and I have a lot of conversations, outside of meals. The one thing you see that I didn't have growing up, we talk about it very often. It's a polarized society. Mm-hmm. We have two parties. They're completely different. Not many, topics and issues that resonate toward, that common ground. I grew up where your grandparents were Republicans and then turned Democrats. And there wasn't this interfighting. It wasn't hostile. We were able to get, and I worked in lobbying when I graduated from college. All of this, the society is so different. How do you feel as a child, today with your friends? It is so polarized. How is this for you, and what's your perspective from your generation?
So, definitely very important to note, just growing up in a very like urban environment, that most people that I'm around are on the left. Just important to note, because whenever talking about politics, it's very important to me to understand your own bias.
Yeah. And we're also in Georgia.
Yeah.
So that changes dynamic. And if you don't know Georgia political landscape, anywhere around Atlanta traditionally tends to be left Democratic. You go outside and then it becomes more Republicanist traditionally. Now it's right now a purple state.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So from my perspective, I feel like just the polarization of just America and the world in general is honestly a problem that I feel like is essential to solve, because it goes further than politics. It goes from a lack of understanding of people's ways of lives, stuff like that. Like, I feel like a lot of people today are only willing to view their life as kind of way people's lives should be lived. Like I see a lot of people like in cities who kind of disregard rural people who live like a more like relaxed, less like city-centered lifestyle. And I see this from all groups of people where there's just a lack of understanding that.
Do you feel like people are willing to listen, or have you seen that being one of the challenges?
Yeah, so I see it as stemming from people not being willing to listen.
Yeah.
Because it starts by like this political party has this point of view, then the other party disagrees with it, but instead of having a conversation about it
and coming and meeting in the middle.
Yeah, meeting in the middle, it becomes this cycle of just feeding off, like, I guess, intolerance and not understanding. So I feel like as a society, we need to kind of take a step back and realize that we are in a very important time period. The past 80 years have been the most like peaceful time geopolitically, and
with different points, obviously with segregation and everything, but there's those critical points
compared to the rest of human history. I think we're living in the most prosperous time. The fact that we're not worrying about 100 different diseases killing us right now.
Yeah.
I feel like it's something that a lot of people today kind of overlook
and take for granted.
Take for granted is that it is not hard to live today. Just not like living just purely like being alive.
Yeah.
There's no fight for survival. And I feel like a lot of that, there's no struggle to live. Yeah. I feel like a lot of that gets reflected onto the way we treat other people, because we kind of we have to manufacture a problem to kind of have purpose. And I feel like as a society, everyone is unconsciously doing this.
And don't you feel, I'm sure you see it, we're mean as a society. Yeah. We're not nice. We criticize. I grew up and it was happy. You thanked people. And I know I always say, oh, when I grew up, and it's like, I'm 50. I grew up in 1972. You in general, we went through gas crisis. We went through so many different things, so many wars, but everyone was happy and willing to help each other. I don't feel, and I don't know how you feel, people aren't as nice and kind as they used to be, in my perspective. But do you see that as well?
Yeah. So I think if you ever want to lose faith in humanity, you just go to YouTube comment section and you will see
that is so true.
How absolutely horrible people can be.
Yeah, and Twitter comments and social media comments, very true.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the polarization is because now there's anonymity to it, where you can
say anything, no one knows who you are.
Yeah, I can reply to your posts with the most hateful message, and I will never face the repercussions of that.
And whoever you say that to then has that. They don't forget if they see your comment, you're gone. They'll block you, but they'll never forget that.
Yeah, and that's
an interesting
point. Is easier to notice than love is. If you're ever criticized on something, you take that to heart versus something where someone's congratulating you. It feels good, but you're not like honing on that compliment forever. You move past it. a hateful message is something that sticks with someone for longer. So I feel like a lot of it is that the love in society is harder to see. So I think a lot of the polarization is a lack of seeing the love.
So if you think of how do you want to see change in society, do you think listening and being more kind to people and respecting each other is that something you see that potentially could help change?
Well, so I think that would most certainly bring society in a significantly better place. That would allow, you can see all these things that I'm kind of talking about in Congress, where it's literally half of the people are in one party and then the other half are in one party. They don't ever even think about seeing the other side. They are only focused on, I want this bill to be passed because my constituents wanted it. They're not really focused on actually helping people as a whole.
Yeah, society.
Yeah. And I think that it's kind of, I guess, wishful thinking to think that people will become more understanding, because I feel like it's easier to put aside other people's
and just worry about yourself
than it is to just live your own life.
So we recently talked to one of my girlfriends who's in her 70s, and she talked about, and she'll be a guest coming up soon, she talked about how every generation has a boomerang, that it has to get really bad before it gets better.
Yeah.
Do you, from your point of view, see the light at the end of the tunnel? Do you think your generation is going to make a difference to boomerang us back to being kind and thoughtful and whatnot?
So I also think it's very it's very hard to tell, because a lot of what I see of this younger generation is that it is just the extremes of the adults. It is it's kind of more concerning, actually, just how I feel like the people that are least understanding are young people these days, where I have many friends and just people I've known throughout my life that would never even be willing to understand, or even conversate with certain people, which is understandable for some people.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of people, I think, need to just have conversations with people they disagree with, and
learn from others and get their point of view.
Just listen. If you don't agree with them, you can vocalize that. But there's instead of being honest and being I think that that's a flawed point of view because of this, this, and this, it's, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm going to avoid you. You're going to be removed from my life. Stuff like that, where I think it's, even if you have disagreements, even if they're very serious, it's very important to still discuss it, because not discussing it, all that does is keep emotions bottled up and just causes more feelings of just intolerance and hatred. So it's all the way I see it is that it's all a cycle of, the less understanding that you are, the less understanding people will be of you, which then causes you to be less understanding of them. So anyone that's watching, I implore you to just think about having a conversation with someone that you disagree with. It can be anything, and just try to have a humane, respectable conversation with them. Yeah. Because I feel like that is one of the only ways that we can kind of come together, is to just talk and listen.
Well, and I think it brings up a good point of, our world is very diverse. That's what, I love it. My mother was from Germany. I had a German Catholic mother. I had a Jewish father. All of that to me created me to be more accepting because I grew up with such mix. I'm first generation American. Diversity to me and getting everyone's points of view, that's what our world is. We're not all this, and I say that, I'm very involved with D&I stuff, diversity and inclusion. I say that as a white woman. So I do know that as a caveat. And, we've had this discussion. You're white male. That is what it is. But it's also, it doesn't mean you don't want to be part of the D&I discussion and help and have everyone's points of view.
Yeah. I think it's, what's very important is people a lot of times make assumptions unconsciously about everybody. I mean, I think a lot of times people put other people to the side just because of a certain group that they're in. And I feel like
whether it be white male, whether it be a woman, whether it be a black, like it's
any group.
Any
this
group.
Is not this is everything.
Yeah.
Every single, I see this everywhere where a lot of times it goes unchecked and unnoticed. And as a society, we are so much more progressive than we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Yeah. And it has been getting more and more progressive, like quicker. I mean, 60 years ago, Black people were not integrated into white schools. Like that fact is so hard to like even comprehend for me that.
Well, we had the conversation about when my mother came to this, United States in 1964, she had no credit. She only could get a credit card. It was like the late 80s or something. I forget what excuse me for forgetting, but it was like, what do you mean she couldn't get her own credit card?
Yeah.
That to me is, and it was only how many years ago? And that is mind blowing with so many different variants of that.
I think that, I forgot exactly which year, but it was some year in the 90s where women reached full, just legal equality, not full like societal equality.
Yeah, not financial, but legal. Amazing.
But under the law, it has only been like 30 or something years, which is just
I graduated.
It's so hard to comprehend to me because I have grown up in a world where like everyone is included.
Or can be included.
Or everyone can be included. At least from my experience.
It's mind-blowing. I graduated from high school in 94, and some of these laws I never even thought about. I don't know why. We just didn't talk about it. That, women couldn't get your own credit card. I never thought about it. I went to college. My dad helped me. I got my first credit card to go away to college. So that's really interesting. So, you talked about what you want people to do. What do you think from an adult perspective? What do you think adults and parents need to know about kids today from your perspective? Like if you could tell parents, you've got a lot going on. What would you want? What's the advice for other, parents listening?
I mean, so just from what I see, a lot of young people just feel like there's nothing they can do. Anything from climate change to the state of the economy and like income inequality.
Human rights.
Human rights. A lot of it just feels like it's kind of old people that are in the positions of power that
are dictating what's happening.
And I think within the next 10, 15 years, as baby boomer generation gets replaced in positions of power, I think it will allow a lot more, I guess, change to happen because the baby boomer generation, a lot of people know this, they kind of screwed things up.
Like truly. And they were the largest population group and they did a lot of damage.
They they were essentially
No, sorry for anyone in that generation.
Not calling you out, just
however,
as a whole. Because the reaction, they were the generation after the Second World War, so America was trying to find itself. And is during the Civil Rights Movement, so it's kind of, the baby boomer generation is a reflection of that time period, and I feel like it's time for them to go.
And what's your generation going to be the reflection of? What do you think? If you had a magic crystal ball, what would you say? Or what would you hope?
Well, not to kind of cause fear into anyone, but I feel like in the next couple years, couple decades, there will be major world conflict, particularly between the U.S. and China. I feel like it's just headed in that way. There's kind of no avoiding it, I would say, because that's how countries work. The history of the world is the history of conflict, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you.
And I think that the coming years are, at least in my opinion, I feel like they are going to shape the next 1,000. I genuinely think that. I think we're basically living in a period where, I mean, everyone's lives will change, I feel like, within the next 20-something years based on the result of the coming conflicts. Climate change, particularly, that is something that no other group of humans, or civilized humans that weren't just like hunter-gatherers, face.
And it's life-altering.
It's life-altering. It's
like, if your generation, my generation's trying, we're kind of on the fence, not all my peers, but your generation, we have to leave something to you. Like, it's there, we have to make a difference. There's no turning back. We have to. And I feel like, do you see, I know it's all doom and gloom, but do you have hope and prosperity? And do you feel?
Yeah. So I think life will live, I think.
And happy, do you feel like, how's your outlook? Are you like, oh, we've got so much we can do to make a difference?
Well, so I think that if we compare this time period to other points in history, I see it as there's the history of humanity or of civilization is essentially good times and then bad times. It's like a like, that is a really simplified version, obviously, but you can kind of
see that pattern.
You can see that pattern with most of human or history, and I see that the conflicts coming will breed the next
innovations and everything.
Like we see after World War II is when like everything we use today is basically been invented in the past.
It's a short period of
50, 75 years. It's very like, I feel like no one really will understand
can't
comprehend.
Which is
us included.
Which is exciting. To some degree,
Yeah. I think that it's very hard to like kind of see that we are the this is the most unique time period, I would say. There's been no other time period where I have a phone where I can look up anything I want. I can look up any fact and it is at my fingertips. The fact that that is even feasible is
and talk to anyone
that we take for granted.
Well, I've given you examples, like we had huge encyclopedias at home because I would have to go look something up if my father knew a lot. But there's always that, you go look that up. And that would be in a big book. We also, I think back to talking to my grandparents in Germany, we talked to them every Sunday and we had to be very careful because it cost, I don't know, $50 to talk to them every Sunday. Whereas I can call my family and friends in Germany it's part of my international plan. Like, that's mind blowing
Yeah.
to think of, like, that's just a small facet.
And not only that you can call them, that you can do it anywhere.
And you can see them.
Yeah.
I couldn't see my grandparents unless I saw them physically at the airport and at our home. Like, it is totally mind blowing. So what are there any questions I haven't asked you that you would want people to know about from, your thoughts of what can be done better? What are some, let's leave on a couple positive notes. Like, what are you looking forward to most? You, your friends, what is everyone kind of next stage in life? Like, what are you thinking?
I mean, I definitely think that things like polarization will, ease, because just like with kind of how I see us headed towards conflict, past history has shown periods of incredible like polarization and not understanding, followed by periods of the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And I see that as what will follow kind of the next like decades or two is I feel like there will be a really kind of great period of human like I guess just greatness, and we'll see the like potential of humanity.
That's great. Yeah, I really hope so.
Yeah, like I feel like within the next, like in 500 years, the odds that we will be venturing stars and Mars will like NASA is sending a mission in 2024 to start like preparing a moon base. Like,
it's wild.
We are living in the kind of turn of where we're going to kind of start focusing
it's not
less on Earth and more on like a universe and like solar system kind of.
And these were all ideas and concepts that are actually going to happen in a very short period of time, which is amazing.
Yeah. Also automation. I feel like automation's it's very cool, but it's also very concerning.
Yeah.
Because it really could go in all these different like directions. I feel like regardless of where the world is headed now, there will be a better time, because that is just how humanity goes.
It's the cycle.
Yeah.
So is there anything I didn't ask you that you want to ask? Because I've one always, as you know, parting question that I want every guest to answer. Is there anything that you else want to highlight? And I feel like there's so many other conversations I want to talk about. We have a very unique family. I want to talk about that at some point. Follow up on some things that Madeline in episode 1 talked about. Is there anything else you want to highlight? Or do you want to go to my challenging last question? What would you like?
I can't think of any, so.
Okay. I always love your insight. I love our dialogues. You're super insightful, and I can't wait to see where it goes. So here's my parting last question.
Wait, before that, just if anyone, I would love to hear feedback on kind of what I've been saying, because like I've been saying, I feel like it's important to hear that feedback. So
I'll put there's comment fields on where I post this, YouTube comments. I also have on herstories.com. You can submit feedback. So please feel free to just write, Alexander, or he goes by Alex. I'll always call him Alexander. You can add feedback to him directly, and I'll be sure to share with him.
Yeah.
You ready for mine? Okay. So this question could be hard, and you could, let me know your thoughts. What empowers you?
So,
or inspires you? Either way you want to look at it.
So, what empowers me now? I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, you're 17. Totally get it. I had no idea.
Yeah, but I'm definitely hoping to be able to feel more empowered once I go to college and start growing as an adult.
Anything that inspires you?
I mean, less of like particular things and more of like, I know it's very cliche, but the idea of bringing meaningful change that genuinely helps people
Yeah.
and improves people's lives is something that just the idea of how so many people are so focused on that and care so deeply about that is something that I just find really beautiful.
And you've had that ever since you were little.
Yeah.
You were always concerned about the others. Like if someone fell, you always remember when you're sorry for listeners, but Alexander would be the one that would always hold the door open. And we finally got to the point where like, you can't hold the door for everyone. We had to literally pull him away, but he was always thoughtful, and anyone was hurt, he'd be the first one to run to the child in the playground. You just innately have that, but that's what's going to take you to where you're meant to be.
Yeah.
And I know that like as a mom, but also as someone who's been, working for a long time, you'll find your passion. You have it in you, and wherever that leads, not knowing where you're going at 17, it's okay.
Yeah.
You can go to college, be undeclared, figure it out. That'll be another topic to, help other parents with college. But I think the unknown is actually super exciting.
Yeah. And I'm excited to see like in 5 years, like I'll look back at this podcast and be like, hey, me from 5 years, by the
Exactly.
way. I'll look
hey, Mom.
and I just am very excited to just see my growth as a person.
And I'm equally, if not more excited. I want to thank you very much for joining. You're going to see Alexander again, and more discussions. I really do. I'd love us to have, maybe we have another person that can talk, from another side of view for politically, and just, I'd like to keep the dialogue open, have some of your friends on as well. Mm-hmm. And I very much appreciate your time. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please add comments, feedback. Go to herstories.com, and we look forward to seeing you again sometime soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.